We're live.
Hey,
Where are you, Matt?
what this works
Before
out?
we get started.
Yeah, so I'm in a hotel room. As my hotel room. In As you can see from the lovely view, I'm in downtown Boston.
Okay.
Um,
This is indicative of a Boston hotel room.
yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so I'm in Boston, and we're gonna be here. My wife and daughter and I are gonna be here for I guess till Saturday. Um,
Right on.
and We're meeting up with some friends tomorrow, and actually Tony and Stella are with some friends right now, and I'm in the hotel room working.
So I've already got questions. So when
Oh,
I land in a hotel room, it looks quite a bit different than yours. Specifically, I tend to like open my suitcases, and then I think cables just sort of like it's like one of those cans, where the snake
uh,
thing jumps out. Cables just fly everywhere. So how do you have like an organization technique as you unpack, or do you just not unpack until you need stuff?
yeah. Well, I mean, I guess I have not really unpacked. I mean, my
Okay.
bag. I just brought one bag since I'm only here for a week. It's
One
just have
bag. That's pretty good.
one backpack. And I had everything, including my laptop and everything. And I just had a cable, like a I coil up all the cables. Well, I can't undo it, but coil up all the cables into one bunch, and I've got one plug adapter that has two USB-C and two USB-A, and that's the one
Mm.
charging block, and so that's charging my laptop as well as my phone and other devices and watch. Um, and Yeah, so since those things have come out, I mean those are usually all I carry. I don't carry the Mac
Right.
charging block. Although I just looked at I plugged in a while ago and it's still at 7%. So that's not a good sign.
Oh, yeah. So maybe it's running it but not charging. Is it one of those? Is it GAN? Is that the name
Yeah,
for those
yeah,
new chargers? Yeah.
yeah,
I've noticed they're very powerful and really light, which is nice. So the MacBook charger is great, but it's big, so it's bulky and
yeah.
it's
So
and it's
that's the one
heavy.
I'm carrying.
Oh, that's
It's
awesome.
hyper juice. So yeah, it works really well. Although I thought it did. It doesn't seem to be charging super well. Maybe I plugged everything else.
Yeah, maybe it only takes like one of those or something at this speed.
Yeah. Maybe I should try plugging in my.
Yeah, 7% is one of those. This could spell disaster. So one of the things
6%.
I noticed when you're going through your quick, you're draining down. When you're going through your quick inventory of stuff there, I'm not caring about a lot of cables. Like for me, I bring duplicates of cables for sure. So that means like 2 bags in case I lose one.
Yeah.
Sometimes triplicates, and maybe for headphones, like 5 headphones. I'm really careful, let's say, about
Yeah.
losing a cable, having a cable that's not the right length or what have you. But I've got to get better because when I went to Sydney recently, through both airport securities, they're like, you can't have this many cables. It's just too much.
Really?
Yeah, I've hit the limits of cables. So I think if you're bringing like 3 of each cable and you've got like USB micro, USB C, and then maybe like some lightning cables, you want to be careful. They seem to not want too many cables at this point in time. But when I travel to the US, I go through Nexus or Global Entry. It's generally okay, but I guess for international travel, they're a little bit more strict.
No, I've never had problem with. Okay, it's going the right direction now.
Excellent. That's always a good sign, especially when
yeah, as soon as the stream starts. No, I've never had a problem with too many cables. The only time I've had a problem going through any sort of security where they said you can't have this was, I think the first trip I took after COVID. So I think going to Vegas for reInvent last year,
okay.
Because in my backpack I had like a Leatherman. Like, oh shit, forgot to take out a pocket knife.
Right.
You're not allowed to have that. And it was.
I've seen them taking pocket knives now because the blade, right? It's the main blade length.
Well, in the past, I've had ones with a really tiny blade, and they've been fine with that. But this thing had like a 4-inch. I mean, it was like a massive blade. And
So did you lose your Leatherman? Because those aren't cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty expensive one, and they said you can go out and just ship it to yourself. That's fine. It's just, I was,
You know, someone if there's an auction or whatever, you know, someone's just getting a deal on that Leatherman for sure.
Oh yeah, I just couldn't bother to go out and do that. And then another thing that I've had a problem with was getting on a flight on, I think it was Air New Zealand from Sydney to Auckland. The folks had problem with my laser pointer, and so they pulled out the batteries from the laser pointer.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, but when I used to travel, I mean, I used to fly. I used to often fly with between 3 and 12 laptops.
That is a lot. Like 3, maybe I can understand. 12 is.
But 12 like in checked baggage, so checked case with 6 laptops in each case, and that would occasionally get problems because even 3, you know, depending on the country, they'd say, "Where's the customs papers for these?" Like, what do you mean? They're my laptops.
Right.
Nobody travels with more than one laptop.
Yeah. I'm generally okay with like a work laptop, personal laptop, but then when you get into the iPad and Switch, they start asking questions because that's 4 devices, and I just tell them I'm in tech, and generally that's okay. Like I just say, like, sorry, I'm a big nerd, and get away with it, but like I can see this not working at all.
Yeah.
That's for freaking this. Why did you have 12 though? I'm so.
That's when I used to be a trainer, and
okay, so it was for that.
Before internet was, well, even I guess I was going to usually going to countries like going to Zagreb in Croatia, or going to other former Eastern Europe, former Soviet republics, and you know, sometimes the internet wasn't so great, so I just bring the laptops.
Yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah,
I've debated bringing like a Raspberry Pi cluster or something like that, but then there's 12 devices and a lot of cables, and I feel like it would.
Yeah, but then there's those are a little bit less like polished in a nice case, and you've got kind of almost semi-exposed boards, and that does
what you don't want. Yeah, they don't want to see raw PCBs or like cables. No bodge wires like that, and I've got like pigtails hanging off mine for power and stuff like that. Of course, they don't like it. I did once travel with a mechanical keyboard that was fine all the way up to when I got in Samsung Digital City, and it wasn't that it was a mechanical keyboard that was the problem. It's that it was a reprogrammable USB device that was the issue. And I got through it one day. They're like, please don't bring this back tomorrow, kind of thing.
Okay.
You're fine, but don't bring it back. And I think their worry was that the chip that's on it, it's not an ARM chip. It's like an Atmel STM32.
Right.
It's quite small. Like the flash is quite small. I think it's 32 kilobytes is what the 32 is for. But they said it could hold a payload, and that payload could infect a computer if crafted specifically. And I was like, I mean, actually, I didn't know this. And 2, like, that's a fairly good point. I understand it. So they said like manufacturer stuff only, no homebrew stuff in the this is Samsung Digital City. It's a massive place. It's got like security guards and stuff like that. So I understood it then, but at the time I was like, it's just a keyboard.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine the devices that, you know, the TSA has to deal with, or in some of these guarded like corporate locations that they have to look at, and you have to explain to people.
Yeah.
Not just to switch from an iPad, right?
When I've gone to some of those locations, like some banks in Australia, where you know, you go into this cylinder that opens, and you step into the cylinder with glass walls, and then it opens the other side, and you're allowed through. And there's a box where you have to put all your stuff. And you can only go in with, well, you can't really. I couldn't go in with anything. I just, you know.
Yep.
And that was. I'm glad I don't work in places like that every day.
Yeah, those high security ones. And did they tape up your like camera on your phone or on your laptop?
I had to give up my. Well, this was.
Give up your. Yeah, we couldn't bring personal devices.
The phone was BlackBerry at the time, so I don't know if it had a camera.
Yeah, pretty bad one. I mean, what could you possibly do with the BlackBerry camera back in the day?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty interested in the travel charger that you've got. I wonder, does it have like, you know how sometimes you can pull the thing out and there's like a hidden recessed 2-pin cable area? Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes in the Mac chargers they'll have them. I'm looking around to see if I've got one. But what I found out recently is like most of the chargers we buy these days are actually 100 volt all the way up to 240, which I didn't understand. But like in terms of a supply chain, like why would you make multiple chargers for different regions? Just make one. But apparently you can just buy the pigtails and just plug them in, or 2-pin power cables, I think is what they're called. And in fact, after I figured that out, I realized, okay, Apple's done this already. They're ready to sell you something for this. 35 Canadian, maybe 25 Canadian, but you get all of the adapters for worldwide. And then you don't have to bring like the multi adapter. You just bring the one that fits. And though I understand what you're saying about the MacBook charger being bulky and stuff like that, what I realized was I could plug in the MacBook and then charge things off of it, which was pretty good up to a point. And maybe the same point that you hit. When you hit about 4 devices, it's not charging anymore. It's just keeping things alive. It's like lights on.
Yeah. Well, actually, one thing I always used to do, because pretty much all the power supplies I was using were auto switching. Just go to Home Depot or any hardware store and get the 3 outlet extension cable, or 4 outlet, something really compact. Get the one adapter for that, and usually the adapter I got was there's like a super flat one that doesn't have any intelligence in it. It's just a way of having the little pins that go that way, or holes, or and then plug in your extension cord into that, and now you've just gotten all your devices plugged in, and you only need one adapter.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good idea. I didn't think about that. I do really like power bars. I may one year, I think that the first year after being married, have given my wife a power bar for either Christmas or her birthday or something like that. I'll never live it down. So I grew up on a show called Red Green in Canada. I think it was also in the States, but one of the things was and this is it's aged, but it's aged okay. If they don't find you handsome, they might as well find you handy, is one of these quotes. And I feel like if you can give somebody something that they use all the time, that it's a gift that keeps on giving. When they use it, they'll think of you. But this did not work. It did not go over well.
Not romantic at all.
But I do like that idea. So the power bar that you can just change the end on and then have everything else plugged into. Is good. And I didn't realize you could get power bars that were like 100 to 240 as well. That's super handy.
Right. The other thing that I've found useful a lot was that sometimes in some countries they have the grounding pin, and then the main 2 holes on the wall side don't accept any plug until there's something in the grounding pin. And so the grounding pin actually on the plug is a little bit longer to basically disengage the holes. At which point I realized that a plastic pen top, pen cap that had like a Bic pen cap was just the right size to fit into that charging hole, the grounding hole. So you shove that in, piece of plastic, what's going to happen, and then put the rest of it in, and it was great.
So one time I landed in Bangalore one time at 3 a.m. and proceeded to take down the entire floor's power because I didn't understand. One, it was dark in my room, the lights weren't on. So I mean, this is the only thing that we could possibly fault the hotel for. The rest of it is me trying to fit the plug into the thing, and I had the right plug, which is fine. I ended up putting it in sideways, so the problem was I didn't have the ground pin, so I put it in on an angle because it was in the dark, and I basically essentially bridged the ground to the current and just took down everything. And the concierge was so apologetic. I'm so sorry this happened to you. I was like, no, I'm positive this is my idiocy. It's like this has never happened again. It's like like no one's as dumb as me at 3 a.m. Like I'm so sorry. It took him about 30 minutes. He got in there with the screwdriver and like I don't know what he was doing with the screwdriver and the wires, but he got it fixed. But I'm positive I just blew a fuse. I felt so bad. And the next day at the front desk, they're apologizing to me. It was ridiculous. Like a sure way to make me feel guilty is to apologize for me to something that's like literally my fault. I felt like dying.
Oh my God.
So don't do that. Don't put them in sideways. It will work. They will physically fit, and you will disengage that ground security system.
That is amazing. I've never considered that. Yeah.
I don't think most rational people would.
Try it right now.
Please don't. So the other thing I noticed when traveling is that go ahead.
Things I learned on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed while traveling is like sometimes you can get the ones that have so they're round holes, but they're almost like they're a dual accept standard US plug. So it's a plug itself will actually accept a few different things in the plug. Yeah, which I had never seen before, which is pretty cool. So it would accept multiple mediums and then decide based on what had been plugged into it, what it should give it, which is pretty smart too. Like I understand why we have so many standards and people argue about which one is better than the other. But I think being able to have these ones that are multi-use is really handy because you used to need like step-up converters, step-down converters, all this other stuff, bulky things that would go with it. Just
my airline seat last night. I flew in from Seattle. The plug at my seat had about lots of different ways you could plug into the same area on the outlet. You could plug in the straight pin, the angle pin, the holes, and which is so much better than a long time ago before. It was very common to have plugs at your seat. They used to have like a special plug that was just for airline power.
Really?
So it was like a DIN connector. So around almost like a MIDI cable. I mean, a very, very different kind of cable that was only for airline power.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed is that those airline headphone plugs are still around. The two.
The two, yeah.
If you use one side, it will give you both. If you use the other side, it's mono, which is not handy.
Yeah.
Or it's probably just one channel. It's probably just the right channel going through both. But I thought that standard had died as well. Maybe it's for legacy reasons they've got it around. Maybe you can plug in like a really nice headset that has, two. But I've never seen
every time I've gotten a pair of headphones, like the Bose that I had earlier, they came with the little 2-pin adapter.
Yeah. I think Audio-Technica is the same because I've got a bunch of them now and I never use them.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it should go into my bag.
Yeah. I haven't actually been on a plane that's had that in a long time, but I'm sure there's got to be there's a lot of old planes in the air.
Yeah, so I should come clean. I was flying a 787 Dreamliner, and I got upgraded to first class for the first time in my life, and it was really nice. It was very, very nice. And I'm not saying this to brag or anything like that.
Was that
I felt very out of place.
All the way to Sydney?
Yes, all the way coming back from. But yes, this is the first time that's ever happened to me in my life, and like of any flight for it to happen to.
Yeah, that's great.
This is honestly the one.
So which airline was that?
It was Air Canada, but I had no idea you could lie flat in these pods. Like this is a brave new world for me.
Amazing.
It was pretty cool. Now, have you flown in the lie flat before? Do you fit in it?
Yeah.
Okay, because it felt like I could touch my head and my feet to it, but I'm pretty short. I'm like 5'8".
Depending on the airline, what the pitch is between the seats, because I've definitely been on some lie flat on United where I didn't have that problem. Often in the JetBlue Mint. In fact, when I head back to Seattle on Saturday, I'm going to fly on Mint, and sometimes I've been able to touch, head to toe, head and toe hits the sides. And
it's still better than premium economy or economy.
Yeah, when I used to fly a lot from Amsterdam to Sydney usually via Chicago, I'd usually have lie flat on both ends of those. Yeah, actually, no, it would fly to Chicago. I'd change in Chicago and in LA, and then the Amsterdam to Chicago and the LA to Sydney were always the first class lie flat. But I never paid for those tickets. They were always coach. I always got free upgrades. But I was
Really?
doing
Just through like points or something?
sometimes it was points, but sometimes just because you're flying, I was averaging 150 to 180,000 miles a year.
Wow, that is a lot.
Yeah, you go to Australia 4 times a year, and those miles quickly add up. Go to Australia. I used to go to Australia 4 or 5 times a year, Dubai 4 or 5 times a year, Singapore, Hong Kong, Buenos Aires, all those types of places multiple times a year. And
wow, that's so much flying.
Yeah.
Now, do you work on the flight? I got to admit, there was someone in front of me who had one of those 17-inch Mac laptops. I'm sorry, PC laptops, and he was in Excel the entire 16-hour flight. I think he may have slept an hour. And listen, I wasn't watching him very closely. I certainly dozed off for a bit, but I did not see that laptop leave, and it was very bright. It was like illuminating most of the cabin. It was so bright. You know those gaming laptops that are very bright? Yeah, I don't want those.
Yeah, I was editing a video in Final Cut for a lot of the flight.
Wow.
And I mean on the M1 Pro Max or whatever that this Mac is, it's the battery life on this thing is amazing because I didn't plug in the whole time because
that's how you get 7%. Yeah.
And I was just on battery that whole time, even in Final Cut. I took about a 2-hour break in the middle to watch. When dinner came out, I watched Wall Street, the movie from like 90s or so with Sheen, Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen,
Charlie Sheen.
I don't know, one of the Sheens. It was pretty good.
And not to segue too much, but the M1 with Final Cut, how is the performance? Because I'm on the cusp here of considering M2 or something Max, or I don't know what I'm going to do.
Anything that's not the end. I mean, the newer Macs, they're incredible. They're absolutely spectacular.
And what's the dev ecosystem, right? Like, do all the tools that you expect to work now?
Everything works. I mean, the only thing I think, like, if you're using virtual machines, VMware, I'm not sure if it's there yet, but
I did see someone talk about that.
Yeah, using Docker is no problem. I ended up getting Parallels because that does work on M1 instead of VMware. And there's also a few free. There's a free one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of crap.
Okay.
But
I saw that it could run Solaris on M1, so that's obviously my use case.
Yeah. No,
Docker works is
amazing. Yeah. Docker works great. Okay. So I'm in. I usually have a Kubernetes in Docker desktop running most of the time, and that works great. And at the same time having Kind and Minikube and some of those all going, and I haven't had any issues. I seem to remember there were some issues with it, like in the first few days that I had it, and then all those issues went away.
I feel like we've talked about this before and possibly on this podcast, but I'm at the cusp at this point in time. I think when I noticed Lightroom came out, I think it was probably when I mentioned it last time, somewhere else. But recently noticing that Docker, not Docker itself, but the images that you expect to run now mostly have ARM ports. So if you're trying to set up like MySQL, Postgres, no problem. But if you're trying to set up different front ends, like maybe it's Nginx or some other
controller. The only problems that I run into are with some of the if you're using Kubernetes and you're using the plugins for kube control from Crew, a lot of those plugins are only built for Intel or whatever x86. And it's not a huge, the developers of those plugins, they aren't like big companies, they're just one person, and so
Right.
never get around to updating it. But that's really the only problem that I've run into is around that. I can't think of anything else I've had an issue with.
And I know we had talked about the universal audio. I think I told you there were instructions at the time, but those were like a day old when I had found them.
Oh yeah.
Does that work now?
Yeah,
No
now
problem?
I'm fully yeah, I use only on my M1 plugin, and everything works great. Even the like tethering with my Panasonic camera all works great. Everything
Oh,
is
that's awesome.
in fact, before I would have like the audio stuff running on my iMac,
Right.
and then other things running on my Intel MacBook Pro, because I
Mhm.
had to. Because even though I mean, at the time when I was still at Datadog, that was the single most powerful machine that Datadog owned, and it was off my
Right.
laptop. Um, and and now I just have the one M1 Pro Max, whatever, and that's all I need. I mean, I don't need to plug in, and I've got this massive widescreen, and it's just magic.
That is so
It's
awesome.
fantastic.
It shouldn't matter, but you know when you're in the security line and people are pulling out your laptops,
Mm.
and at one point there were two silver MacBooks on the tray, but like everyone else had M1s. And
Yeah.
and again,
Yeah.
it's not that it matters; it's more of like an indicator. Everyone's got
Yeah.
one. Chances are it's probably safe. And someone picked up my laptop and said, "Oh, I think this is mine." And I was like, actually, I'm sorry, that's mine because I know it's older." But I was just touching my Mac, like just as we're talking, like the older Intels got really hot, and then the fans would spin up, and
Yeah.
like I can totally understand having to spin stuff off because
Yeah.
it just becomes a problem. My partner, for example, would get on Google Maps and just poking around in Google
Yeah.
Maps would cause her laptop to just start sound like a jet engine. So anything to do with like the GPU kind of stuff is a bit of a mess. But yeah, that's good to hear because like Final Cut's very GPU intensive.
Yeah. And battery life. I mean, that Intel Mac, I would be lucky when I would get hour and a half to 2 hours.
Really? That's terrible.
Oh,
Okay.
It was awful. And every Mac I've ever had has always been like that. And then with this one, I remember the day I got it, took it out of the box. I didn't even pull out the power cable. I just turned it on to see, well, does it have any power? And I didn't have to plug it. And I used it. And I used, when you first get a laptop, you're like,
right, you're installing everything.
Like, what's the worst you can do to it? And I ended up in Final Cut for a while with some virtual machines running in the background and Docker going as well. And I didn't have to plug it in until the next day. It was like mind blowing. Like, how is this still working?
What a dream.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah. It is incredible. And I do have like an M1 iPad, and yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Amazing.
So what's going on in Boston? What's the main trip? Are you still touring around?
The main thing is tomorrow we my wife and I and Stella, we meet up with Stella's birth parents because it's an open adoption, so we meet up with them, and so that's going to be exciting. We haven't seen them since we moved to Seattle. It was 2 years ago, so yeah, that's the main reason we came out. Yeah.
So for an event like that, like again, it's me, but I would bring like 3 cameras. But what's your approach here? Because I know you only brought 1 book bag.
That's my camera.
The book bag's your camera, or the iPhone?
The iPhone's my camera. That's it. That's all I brought.
Gotcha. Oh, sorry. I think your video is lagging a little bit on my end.
Okay.
I see the camera.
Fast connection isn't super fast.
The audio is great. I think he might have gotten out of sync there at some point.
But yeah, I just brought the iPhone. I didn't bring any camera gear. I go through phases where I carry, a lot of camera gear, and I think I'm gone into the phase where it's like, man, I just don't bring a lot. I did bring, like for the rafting trip in Idaho, I did bring a GoPro, but that's it. And I guess the last few trips I've taken, I haven't really brought much, although scroll back to a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have brought, the GH5 and a whole bunch of lenses with me and go out with it every day. And I'm sure I'll go back into that phase. And I've done that since I started getting Nikon gear when I was still in high school. I go through these phases where I bring everything and I get so sick and tired of having everything and I just go to nothing and get a disposable camera or something.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the bring everything mode right now. And because of that, I don't know, like I've been having foot pain and stuff like that. I think I mentioned earlier, like I found out I've got bone spurs, which I didn't even know was a thing. But I'm like causing pain to myself just carrying around so much gear. So I'm starting to rethink, like maybe this is like when you decide what. I think we had talked a long time ago about like Nikon glass versus Sony versus Panasonic, that kind of thing. And yeah, right now I'm carrying like a full Nikon kit and full Sony kit and multiple bodies for each, and it's just way too much.
Way too much.
I've got to pare it down quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's good. It keeps you in shape, but also like you start to suffer, and then what you went there to shoot isn't as enjoyable if you went there for a trip. Like you don't want to be in pain, especially if you're traveling for work and you're doing a lab or something like that. It's not good. I'm trying to pare down.
So what did you take with you to Sydney? You took everything, your Nikon gear and stuff?
Oh, so listen, great plans. I decided to bring only one lens and only one camera. So I got the A7R IV. It's like a 61 megapixel camera, which is quite a bit of megapixels.
Amazing, yeah.
And one lens, the 28 f2.8 28 f2. And I have one shot in mind, Sydney Opera House. I figured this would be easy. It's right by the hotel. I'll just pop the camera out. So first day, super jet lag. First day I walked around for 6 hours, managed to miss the Opera House, I think 3 times. We were just like one street in and we were just walking in circles. Did not also bring the camera with me. And the next day I was super jet lagged and kind of slept through the morning. And then the next day I got busy. And then the next day I came back. So I've seen some of Sydney downtown. I've certainly been to like electronic shops and stuff like that, looking for the adapters that we were talking about before. But I brought the camera out of the bag and made sure like it was charged and take one shot. Just so bad. But I did bring my iPhone with me and took a couple shots here and there of like restaurants we went to and stuff like that. But I feel like, so for me at least, I've got a genre of photography I really like that excites me. And it's like portraits of people, like have a seat and I'll take a shot of it kind of thing. And those get me excited and it's like, let's go, this is good. I think normally when I would travel, I would take a photo or something like almost a commemorative sort of thing. It's something I can look back at. And when I see it, I'll remember that time and it will like evoke a bunch of emotions. And I just haven't been really jazzed about that type of photography in a long time, like almost 10 years. And I do like it when I take it, but the problem is like you have to have the camera with you to push the button. If you don't bring it, you're not gonna do it. You don't bring it because you're tired and blah, 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 blah. So I hear you.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to go back to Sydney. Sydney's such a wonderful place, and not just for a 3-day trip. Always, tag on.
Not 3 days.
Oh my God, such a
waste. I know everyone told me tack on a couple days. And there's stuff going on at work. Not that it's bad or anything like that. It's just like a busy time of the year. We've got a big conference coming out and stuff like that. So I want to make sure I'm focused on that as well. So I felt bad taking time off. I'd just taken some vacation as well. So there's some like guilt in there too. I think we talked before about like the acceptable amount of vacation in tech is hard. It's different in Canada than in the US. Most of my coworkers are American as well. So there's some of that there too. But and I know if I said anything, they'd be like, "No, take vacation, please." It's like don't burn out, kind of thing. It's like ingrained in me. I've got to unlearn these lessons. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I do want to go back.
I've gone to Sydney. I've probably entered the country at least 55 times, and it's probably one of the most visited countries for me. Is going to Australia. Australia and Arab Emirates are probably the 2 big countries for me to visit. And Australia, I absolutely love and couldn't visit enough times. And Arab Emirates, I wouldn't mind if I never go back there again.
Oh wow! Just polar opposites.
Oh, yeah.
So Is there a lot of demand in the conference world for the Emirates? Like, is there? Because you were saying you were doing
It was,
teaching and stuff like that.
yeah. I mean, that was. I haven't been since I was in that role, that trainer role.
Okay.
10 plus years ago at OpenText. And the reason why we'd go to Dubai was that it was a easy country for everybody in the surrounding area to visit. So it was easy, even at that time, for Israelis to go into Dubai, Syria,
Okay.
and all the other Middle Eastern country. I mean, North African, East African, entire Middle East. It was an easy place for them to all go. It was a nice, good hub, and the politics of the area were loose enough that anything can go. And we never had any problems there. Unlike there were some other countries nearby where we did have issues, and so that was a nice place to go for that. Unfortunately, there's nothing.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. So it's more central. It's more convenient than it is anything else. Very interesting. I've never been. There's certainly things there that I'd like to see, but yeah, I can understand if it's not.
I mean, everybody goes to try that ski slope and you think, oh my God, this is amazing. Being able to go skiing indoors, and it's amazing for the first 15 minutes, and then it's like boring. You get a half-hour ticket or an hour ticket, thinking it's not going to be enough, and 15 minutes in, it's like, is it bad if I want to leave right now? One or two runs up that ski run is like, this is boring.
So I'm definitely at that age. Like, if I'm in a restaurant and I'm not having a good time, I'm happy to pay and leave. Or if something's happening, it's like, I could be elsewhere. I feel bad, kind of, but also this would be better for both of us. I'll just leave.
Yeah. I mean, it's not as bad as, say, a Harry Potter movie, but almost.
Yeah. there was one of those on the flight as well.
Yeah.
And it's just not for me. I realize there's a lot of people who really like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It's not my cup of tea, I guess.
As we try to alienate more people.
Yeah, exactly. Like half our audience is gone now. I certainly did watch the first couple of them, I think, where they were playing Quidditch, which apparently they recently had to change the name of Quidditch because of copyright claims. But there is like a Quidditch league. And in fact, I've seen people play Quidditch here in Vancouver. I think they're mostly from Hootsuite, which is like a local tech firm. But yeah, my understanding is they had to change the name of Quidditch to something else.
Oh, okay. Like people who are stupidly playing the real thing aren't allowed to call it that because of the books. Interesting. Okay.
Something like that. I think there may have also been like J.K. Rowling may have said some stuff in public that they were like uncomfortable with. Anyway, I looked it up. It looks like it's been renamed a quad ball, which quad ball is.
Quad ball.
It is fun to watch people running around with brooms, though. Or broom handles. It was interesting. And this was early days, so maybe the rules have changed at this point in time. But yeah, it was fun to watch. They're very entertaining for me. I guess there's like live action people who do lightsaber battles and medieval role playing and stuff like that too.
Right.
Makes them happy.
Well, weren't you? Wasn't one of your like picks for last time the TV series on HBO or about the guy who goes to prison to help catch the guy who's
yes,
Blackbird
on Apple Plus.
Yes. I mean, he was all into the Civil War or not
the reenactment. Yes. Okay, so you've watched it. Yes. I apologize for anyone else who took this recommendation. It was really good, but also way out of the norm for me, which is probably why I liked it. I'm not into a lot of these like true crime sort of based on serial killer stuff. I'll watch them once in a while, but definitely it just gets under your skin. I don't know.
And I mean that the thing that I mentioned in that call was Beauty Queen of Jerusalem or something like that. Or
right? Did you finish it? Yeah,
I did. I got totally sucked in. I mean, there's some parts you just have to kind of speed through because it gets a little bit. My wife would love it, But yeah, it was fun. It was a great, interesting program. They kept going, bouncing forward and backwards in time to, you know, what the parents, you know, it was a neat show. I mean, I wouldn't put it at like best of the year or anything like that, but it was
Okay.
interesting.
Now, you said you watched one movie on the flight. Would you recommend it? Do you have any other recommendations that we talk about?
I don't know.
I've got one. If you don't,
Yeah.
I'm happy to recommend.
Yeah.
So I watched. I'm already forgetting the name here. It's about
I know
a
one
red.
of your first recommendations that you ever gave was Everything Everywhere All at Once, or I think.
Yes, absolutely. Love it.
I tried watching it on the plane. I couldn't stick with
it. There is a lot going on, and there's subtitles, so it can take a bit to like get into the groove for sure.
Yeah.
That being said, so I've watched that movie, and I've major thoughts about Everything Everywhere All at Once. But one of the main themes is the mother-daughter relationship. And the movie that I watched on the way to Sydney was called Turning Red. It's a Pixar movie, I believe, directed by Domichi, and I think possibly written by Domichi, about like a temple owner in Toronto, Canada, who they have like a temple for red pandas, or lesser pandas, I think is some other countries will call them. So like they kind of look like raccoon pandas or raccoon bears. Yeah. At any rate, it is fantastic. Would highly recommend watching it, especially if you got kids. The kids will love it for sure. But there's a lot, you know, those Disney movies will hit like many levels. So if you're a teen, it's interesting. If you're a child, it's good. And it's almost like wizardry, the fact that they can mix in jokes that will be funny for a different reason, for a different audience, but you get them on like a different level. And it's like, oh, I see what you did there. This is actually pretty clever. Not only that, but there's some Asian culture elements in it, as well as like a little bit of Canada, not too much. And then a little bit about maybe the boy band craze that was happening back in the time of like flip phones, basically. I really liked it. Would highly recommend it.
Cool.
Anything else? Any movies, TV shows, audio?
Other things I've been watching.
Just go out and buy an M1 something, right?
Yeah. I did get a new toy.
Oh, what'd you get?
I got a bike.
What kind of bike? Like a motor? Like are we Harley age at this point?
A bicycle. But an electric bike.
Okay. So
I got a Specialized Vado SL 5.0. So it's for electric bikes. It's really light. I mean, it's 30 pounds or something. So not
wow.
I mean, so many of them were like 80 pounds. All the turns and other rad bikes, they're like 70, 80 pounds. So this one's about 30. I also tried Creo Evo, a gravel bike, but they didn't have just the right frame for me, the right size. But
I was thinking about what they're Specialized. Did you have to special order it? Because I know
this was
gonna be a problem.
Yeah, so the bike shop that I went to, the one on Bainbridge Island where I live, their main thing is turn and Specialized, and so they have everything. And I was able to try out a whole bunch of bikes, and then they said, "Well, awesome. We have this other one. It's just not assembled." And so I'd wait a few weeks, and I'd try the next one, and then I kept asking about other bikes, and ended up with this Vado SL, which is spectacular. Where you turn off all the power assist, and it feels like a heavy bike, but not a lead weight. You can definitely ride it with everything off, but then when you hit a hill, and there's definitely a lot of hills on the island, you get this massive assist, and the motor goes all the way up to 28 miles an hour. So pushing you up to there, and then once you go past that 28, it doesn't feel like you've lost a lot. It just feels right. So just got that a few days ago.
That is so cool. Yeah. Now, of course, the tech angle does it charge your phone while you're
No,
like?
no,
Okay. So it doesn't have like USB ports in it or anything like that. It's built
no.
into your
Although
device.
it is Bluetooth, and so as soon as it turns on,
Okay.
the app on my phone shows me current status and GPS location, uh,
Oh,
and you're using your phone. You can program what level of assist happens at each of the 3 different modes, and
nice.
when you do have it attached, if you have the Bluetooth turned on and the right modes turned on, it will automatically adjust the assist level based on your heart rate.
Oh, wow.
So keeping you in the right zone for wherever you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
VO2 max all day, every day, right?
yeah. So, so
That is awesome.
that is pretty cool. Yeah. It doesn't have like electronic shifting. So I think with that,
Okay.
if you turn on that automatic mode, it will even shift for you based on your heart rate,
Wow.
which is amazing.
I've never even heard of electronic shifting. I have to admit.
Oh yeah,
That's
so the Creo that I tested, which was a Creo Evo Expert something.
right.
So that's with the drop down handlebars and all. That had it's pretty neat. So you imagine that drop down handle, and you're holding down below, and the brake lever and the brake levers are like this. But when you're holding the brake lever like this, and then you push that brake lever to the inwards, and that
Mhm.
is what downshifts it. And then there's another little lever next to it, and you push that, and it
Oh,
upshifts. And so everything's right
wow.
there. And then the power assist modes, there's a little button on the handlebar right on either side to
Oh,
increase the power assist and decrease. So as a bike, if they had my size frame, totally
right.
would have gotten it. But they didn't, and because I was looking at a model a year older,
Mhm.
uh, and so the price was a lot lower. It was, I mean, a lot lower meant it was $5,000. But if I had gone for
Wow.
wanting the bigger frame, I would have to get a new one, and it would have easily gone into the $8,000, and I can't justify that. That's
Oh,
just,
yeah. It's a bit harder. You can't just say it's for your health or something like that.
I mean, well, it is. Um, uh, the one of the main problems I have at home is
Mhm.
often the car. We have one car,
Mhm.
and Tony is driving it to drive Stella somewhere, and then she's out doing things. Um, and so now I'm stuck at home, and it's not really a super accessible place. And
Right.
so I just need to be able to get downtown real quickly and come back. And so we've got a car on order, but we're
Mhm.
still waiting for it to even be manufactured. Um,
Gotcha.
and but if I have a bike and that's going to be good enough, well, we no longer need that car, and so we're going to cancel the order for the car as long as this bike works out well.
Right. Right.
Um,
Now, I've been around some of the islands. How long does it take to get to downtown with the ferry and cycling?
so downtown Seattle.
Yeah.
So it'll take. It's about driving. It's about 8 minutes to the ferry, and so
Right.
bicycle is probably about the same because the
Mhm.
speed limit is about 30, and so it'll be about 8 minutes to the ferry. And then if you time everything right and you happen to get right on, and as a bike you'll get right on every time.
Right.
Um, then it's about a 40-minute ferry ride across to downtown Seattle. But
Oh, really? That's not bad at all.
when I say I want to go downtown, I'm thinking downtown Bainbridge Island, downtown Winslow.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I
Yeah,
see what you're saying. But still, getting downtown Seattle, that's good.
yeah,
We
oh,
have
yeah,
a comment saying, biking in Seattle, weather pass on that. I think the main thing that I'll say to people who don't understand the rainy weather is like, you have to get like clothing that suits
yeah,
the weather. And as soon as you do, you'll be so much
yeah.
happier. Like something with a built-in hoodie. When you're biking, for me
Right,
at least, it was having really nice pants and like shoes
right.
that could withstand some wet. but it's like a must, because otherwise you're going to be wet, soggy all the time. You won't enjoy it. So like I understand the past, but also it's not that bad.
But it's common to think that it rains a lot in Seattle, or it rains a large amount. But I mean, the rain is so much worse in New York City and Boston and like every city in the country than it is in Seattle.
Torrential, yeah.
Like a little bit of a mist that is maybe a little bit annoying if you're wearing glasses, but generally it's not a big deal, because it's like this little bit of a mist that's on and off. And it's not like a hard rain. Like, I mean, I've never been as wet as I have been just stepping out, going from the office I was in to the office my wife was in downtown Boston. And it was so I'd say Boston is far worse for riding a bike for rain.
Yeah, would agree. Having grown up in the East Coast, like Halifax and Fredericton, New Brunswick, like when it rains, and it can be spur of the moment, it rains a lot in a short time, and it's often like it's just surprise rain, and you get soaked regardless of what's going on. So they followed up and said that they were there for a week. It was bright and sunny for the first day, and the friend said, "Don't get used to it." And then, of course, they rained for the next 6 days. I mean, that certainly happens. It's a thing. But I would say that the rain is more like a mist.
But getting it good
than anything else.
It's the only place I've ever owned rain pants. And as long as you have rain pants and a rain jacket, who cares? Who cares what the weather's like? Go out and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Layer up, bring a book bag. I'm super interested in, like, does it work with is it Strava that will track like your oh, nice.
So link up with Strava. I was a little annoyed that with the heart rate automatic change, it needs an ANT or Bluetooth heart rate monitor that's like an actual system. It will
like
not
a Wahoo. Wahoos are pretty cheap. Yeah.
Well, it won't work with the Apple Watch.
Yeah. Well, the Apple Watch isn't that accurate anyway. Actually,
it's accurate.
Sorry,
enough.
Folks. Yeah, it is accurate enough.
And actually, I mean, I have the one that goes around the chest, and unless I mean, it was pretty much dead on for what was showing on the watch almost all the time.
Okay. Maybe I should test them, because I do have a Wahoo from back in the day, and it's ANT 2 Plus or whatever it is. And it's honestly, it's pretty cool when you're running to know.
Yeah, the watch is just convenient. I mean, now that the Peloton works with the watch, I mean, I don't want to deal with the band. It's just that's one less thing that I have to worry about.
Yeah, we got lots of comments today. So next one is the fact that I was just in Sydney, and like you can't comment on Australia having just seen Sydney. I mean, the amount of Sydney I saw, I feel like was mostly King Street. So I can't even comment on Sydney, let alone Australia. I definitely need to go back. And it's like, saying you've been to Toronto and that you've seen Canada, I can totally agree. 100% agree. I need to go back. 3 days is not enough to see a city, let alone a country. So I got to go back.
Yeah, I mean, I say I used to go to Sydney. I've probably been there about 45, 50 times. And then Melbourne, probably half of that. I also go to Melbourne.
Oh, nice.
And a couple times out to Perth. And then one time I got a camper van and picked it up in Sydney, and then drove all the way up the east coast of Australia. And that was a great idea, but terrible. A great idea and a terrible idea. A great idea to think, this is a great way of traveling and seeing the area. Terrible in that I timed it as if I were driving a car, and thought, I can totally do this like in a week, no problem. And it ended up being the slog because I had to drive nonstop. Because the first night, I drove until like 8 o'clock in the evening, thinking, okay, it's time to find a campground to pull off on.
Right.
And everywhere I called, oh no, we're closed. All these campgrounds would take the last entrance or last person to come in at like 4:30 in the afternoon.
Oh no.
And so now I have to like get in there by 4:30 or camp out on like on a highway, a rest area. And so I did that first night, and God, it was terrifying because I'm just imagining this axe murderer coming out from the woods to kill me in this camper van. Because it was so that ended up not working out quite as well as I'd hoped.
So just pretty lively today. So someone said you drew up to Queensland. Cool. They live on the I think this is New South Wales,
South Wales,
yeah, Queensland border. So just on the border there. That's sweet.
Let's see, where did
I definitely want to go anywhere around there.
Yeah.
Okay, apparently there's apps you can get for overnight. Okay, maybe things were probably different back when you did it.
Yeah, I drove up to. Oh yeah, I did. Okay, so the person lives right on the New South Wales Queensland border. I drove. Okay, so this is how stupid I was. I did it in 6 or 7 days, and I drove from Sydney up to Cairns, which nobody in their right mind should ever do. Go all that way, and I flew back. And actually, when I got to Cairns, pretty sure it was there. Yeah. I pull into this camper van park, getting ready for my flight the next day. And right next to me, is this Dutch family. And I hear them speaking Dutch and they look Dutch because Dutch have this kind of look to them. And
live there. Yeah.
And so I said, "Oh, you live in Netherlands?" I do too, because at the time I was living in Amsterdam. And he instantly switches over to Dutch. I said, "Oh, no, I don't actually speak Dutch. I just live there." He says, "Well, how long have you lived there?" I says, "Oh, I've been there for like at the time it was probably about 7 years, and in total I'd lived there for 9 years." He says, "Oh, I work at ABN AMRO. When we have somebody who comes in from America, we give them 30 days, and then we switch to Dutch."
Huh. I like it.
And that was the
I
end
like it, sink or swim.
That was the end of the conversation.
He didn't want to have anything to do with you after that. He's like,
"Because we do not speak Dutch."
Yeah. You didn't put in the effort. I'm not gonna talk to you. In Australia, of all places in the world.
Yeah.
Next comment says, like, yeah, Australia doesn't look that big on a map. I mean,
it's like that.
It definitely doesn't on a globe. Yeah, exactly. It looks like nothing on the globe. It's massive.
We've had, growing up in Miami, we always had family and visitors come over from England, and they'd get there and they'd say, "Well, so what do you want to do this weekend?" "Well, we were thinking about renting a car and driving to Chicago. That looks not that far. Is that something we can do in just a weekend?" No.
What map are they looking at? That looks like the size of.
Oh, because they think, well, okay, U.S. must be about the same height as England. England is like,
I don't even know what map projection you could be using.
Florida.
Yeah, this is overcorrecting by like at least an order of magnitude. That is awesome. I have talked to people who talk about driving like coast to coast in Canada or coast to coast in the US, and assuming similar to you that like I could do this in 2 weeks, and like I mean, you could do it in 2 weeks if you're like an F1 racing team with like multiple drivers and you can cycle through and sleep and like eat in the car and like nonstop, maybe. But it's.
I mean, my dad did the drive coast to coast because he when he got kicked out from college, they flew over to the US, like did a one-way flight to the US. A one-way boat trip to the US, and managed to travel all the way over to. Oh no, they bought a car on the East Coast in Canada. I think they were probably in Toronto. They worked in various jobs. This would have been probably late 50s, early 60s. Just worked wherever they could, and then saved enough. Him and his best friend saved enough to buy a car, and then drove that all the way across the country, gradually working, everywhere as they needed money for food. Finally, get all the way to Vancouver, And then they needed to work again they had sold their car, work some more in order to buy a flight to get back home to England. And I think they did this over the course of like a year with no real goal. It's like, well, let's just have fun.
That is phenomenal. I don't think I could have done that when I was younger. Like definitely not now.
Yeah, I mean, this was I don't know if I mentioned that when I did a flight from Miami to England when I was 16, I was accompanied. Have I mentioned this? I was accompanied minor. So the flight attendant goes with you and guides you, brings you over to whoever's meeting you, and they can sign off. And so there's a human flight attendant walking with you the entire time. And my dad like scoffs at this, like, you don't need this. And because he used to do the flight or a series of flights when he was in boarding school at age 10 years old, on his own, dropped off at a train station in London, and then goes the rest of the way from London, gets onto a plane, flies on, changes planes seven, 8 times because they have to keep stopping for refueling. Stopping off in Tripoli and in all these other cities all along, going to where his parents lived in Nigeria, in Lagos. That was his anytime he wanted to go home to see his parents, that was the route he took. And he did this on his own starting at like 10 years old.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah. I mean, even at the point of getting to Lagos and then getting the city bus to get to a close thing to their home in Lagos. And
that is fantastic.
Yeah.
So more in the comments, but somebody Greyhounded from LA to Boston and back, as well as Vancouver to Toronto. I've done the Greyhound. It's a little bit better. At least someone's driving for you. It's
Unless if you're 6'4" like me, Greyhound.
I'm a smaller frame person. Yeah. I like those cushy seats. Yeah. But I think we covered a lot of ground there. We covered some recommendations. We even had comments this week. It was amazing.
We did. It's amazing.
By all means, subscribe, subscribe. What are all the things?
Hold on. Drifter to Theft Drifter isn't your mother, is it? No.
Definitely not. No one I know lives in not Cairns.
Yeah.
The coolest part of Australia. Yeah. Apparently, Cairns is quite hot. 35 degrees at 8 a.m. Yeah, that's a note from me as well.
But I don't think I actually came up with a recommendation. I had my new toy, but I can't think of anything that I've seen recently that gets a recommendation.
Yeah, go out there and get last year's model Specialized. I think we got the Turbo Vado SL.
Turbo Vado SL
4,000 instead of 8,000.
Yes.
That's
the Creo was going to be the 5,000 versus 8,000.
Oh, okay, gotcha. The Creo looks amazing. I was scrolling through those specs while we were talking.
Yeah. It was the Vado SL that I got, and that's a new model. So
it does look nice, though.
It's awesome. So
all right, I think that's it, folks. Thank you so much for hanging out in the chat, peppering us with questions, giving us comments. That was great.
Yeah. Very exciting. Cool. All righty. Talk to you next week.
All righty. Sounds good, Matt. See you later. Bye-bye.
And broadcast.